Today we are going to be discussing probably the most important work by Picasso that is called, as you know, the Guernica, and it's from 1937. If you had the opportunity of visiting Madrid, you could have seen it in the Reina Sofia Museum in the city, Madrid. Okay, so that you have an idea of the dimensions, if you haven't seen it, here is the work at the museum with someone passing. And this painting is an accurate depiction of the cruel and dramatic situation that Guernica was. So that to reflect this situation, the Guernica was created to be part of the Spanish pavilion at the International Exhibition in Paris. The artist had seen dramatic pictures, photographs published in different newspapers, including, for example, this very popular L'Humanité. You have the news right here on the bottom left. So the bombing of Guernica was the air raid carried out on April 26, 1937, as we said, by the what was known as the Condor Legion against the Basque town of Guernica, and it happened during the Spanish Civil War. Why, you may wonder? Just for practice. Franco was very good friends with Hitler, so he let him to use the city of Guernica so that he could test his new bombs. Apparently, this is the first sketch that he created, and he created it the day of the attack itself. And this is how it all started. This is the sketch for the whole picture for the Spanish pavilion. At the time, the artist was 56. Okay, you can see him working. As usual, he was a heavy smoker, so he was generally smoking. And you can see him here as well. And again here. Okay. I included this wonderful video about how the Guernica would look if it was a 3D composition. Let's have a look at it. Well, you can watch the rest of the video, and it's really interesting. Sorry about the music, that it didn't sound very loud, but you can watch the video if you look up for Guernica 3D and it will show up. But the questions that I asked you, the first one was word composition, okay? And we can say so many things about this painting. You know, it's quite big, quite crowded. There are so many different elements. But in reality, it's a typical classical composition, triangular composition, as what happened, if you remember, during the Renaissance. Okay, so some specialists have divided this painting into two different groups. The idea is in general to show the shock of the suffering and deaths with which were like really pointless. So if you look up, the center of the triangle is filled with chaos, and then on one of the triangles, inverted triangles on the left, we have one of the main groups, the bull and the horse. Both of them are wounded, or seems to be wounded, and in the middle of them there is this bird that seems also to be hurt. Then the other group, according to different studies, is made up of human beings, starting with the dead body of the person lying on the floor, and then he's bracketed by different women. The one on the upper right holding a lamp, leaning or coming out a window, the mother on the left holding a dead child, the one that is rushing from somewhere, probably the house, and the one that is on the top right that is crying out to heaven, seems to be crying out to heaven, and her arms are raised as her house is burning down behind her. Okay? Yeah, its importance. Why is Guernica an important work? Nothing that we know of it, the studies or even the complete picture, contains a single allusion to any specific event. So it constitutes instead a generic plea against the barbarity and the terror of war. There are no winners in war. Okay? So this huge picture was conceived as almost a giant poster. Okay? To leave testimony to the horror that the Spanish Civil War was causing, and also for warning what was to come in Second World War. Okay? Also, its display and impact is important in the way that it impacted people. It was first displayed, as we mentioned, at the International Exhibition in Paris in 1937. It was in the Avant-Garde Pavilion, which was more modern and functional. And the impact that it had on all the visitors was all those powerful images were showing the destructive forces that threatens civilization. All the figures depicted here are collapsing, are falling, are screaming. So that takes us to the next section, the subject matter. It wants to show the bombing of the town of Guernica, but it could be actually the bombing of any other town, apart from the bull that makes maybe a little bit more reference to the Spanish country. The rest can be relatable to any conflict in the whole world. So it's a universal theme. Also, at the same time, it's pacifist. What Picasso was doing was denouncing the horrors of war. Okay, to denounce these horrors of war, he didn't use any color. Okay, and because of that, it has attracted a number of controversial interpretations because of the deliberate use of just grayish type of tonalities. So these muted colors and the intensity of each of them and all the elements and all the symbols are essential to explain the extreme tragedy of this scene. And in the end, it would become the emblem for all devastating tragedies of modern society. Also, by not using color, when all the colors have vanished, we have this somber type of mood applied to the scene. But then there are some other theories that try to explain this duality of black and white. So black and white can be the two sides of war where nobody's winning. When you look at it, it's black and white. So is it night? Is it day? Is it indoors? Is it outdoors? We don't really know. And that emphasizes this idea of the generic theme, the universal theme. Also, he learned from this event in the newspaper. So if you look at the horse, part of the horse is created using this newspaper format by the technique of collage. Okay, so the whole idea to this use or absence of color is to describe the idea of death and massacre. So let's talk about some of the symbols here. Probably the bull represents the Spanish country, and then the horse would be the other side in this war. Again, both of them are suffering, none is winning. And a horse is also an animal that it's commonly used in battle. The light bulb, what can it represent? Some people say that it's the eye of God. Some people say it's the light of reason. And some other people say it's the effect of the blast of the bomb themselves. Then the crying mother. There are quite a few women in the painting. For example, this one running away, but this one is especially important because it's holding the dead son and she's crying for it. So it's basically saying that we have killed, that we are killing our future, but it's also a tribute to one of the greatest artists. I don't know if you remember having seen this type of composition, but it's actually inspired in La Pietà by Michelangelo. If you were wondering about any symbols of peace and hope, the first one would be this almost chopped hand holding a broken sword, but out of it, it's coming very subtly this small little flower that it's almost not visible to the eye. And then this bird that he included in between the two other animals, the bull and the horse, that says that maybe we can find peace in all of this horror. If we compare Picasso to other representation of war, for example, Velázquez had this idea of war as an honorable type of act. Then Goya decided to represent the horrors of war, and then Picasso did his universal type of theme, and where nobody is winning. We see only victims. Okay? So, to sum up, just a few things. So, it's a work about the consequences of war. There are no executioners. It shows only the victims, the pain, and the suffering. It shows how Spanish people are confronted against each other. By using these deformed figures, we see how it's emphasized this idea of drama. It is also emphasized by the use of monochromatic tonalities. It also helps its great dimensions that contribute to the sense of chaos. But at the same time, there is a simplification of the elements. It's all like 2D. And also, it's a fusion of cubism, collage, surrealism, and expressionism. It has been a work that has been discussed and described throughout history many, many times. There have been like many interpretations, adaptations, like this one with color, that if you can see it, it doesn't have the same effect. Also the 3D type of representation, okay? And all of these interpretations have just tried to explain what Picasso wanted to achieve with this painting, but basically he hated when people asked him about the meaning of his paintings. And some people say that he used to carry a fake gun to point at people when they dared to ask him about the meaning of some of his paintings. So probably with all these things that we have been doing, discussing the painting, he wouldn't be that happy, but I think it's worth the risk. Okay, so thank you very much, and I'll see you next with Dali.